Hey everyone, this is a review of Milwaukee's Gen 2 Fuel M18 18-gauge brad nailer. It's model number 2746-20. So I've got the Gen 2 here. I'm going to compare it to the Gen 1 and talk about the differences between these two and all the improvements Milwaukee has made to the Gen 2 version. In full disclosure, Milwaukee actually sent me both these nailers, the Gen 1 quite a while ago, the Gen 2 more recently. You can go check the Gen 1 review out. I'll link it in the video description if you want to see that one. Here's the tool up close. I'm going to give you a tour of this one, and then I'm going to do a side-by-side with the Gen 1 and show you some key differences Milwaukee has between these two guns. So to start off with, this is an 18-gauge nailer. It takes 18-gauge brads, anywhere from 2 1/8 inch long through 5/8 of an inch long. They load into the magazine. It takes 110 of them. You can close it up. You've got a viewing window here with approximately 25 number increments of nails, so you can see how many you've got loaded in there. And it also has dry fire lockout, which will stop firing with about 3 or 4 nails left in there, so you don't start making dents in wood and not actually nailing things. On the top here, you've got your quick release, so you can actually open it up and clear jams. It's very easy. I've done that once in the few thousand nails I've fired through this. Only had one jam and it cleared in a matter of seconds. So great design there, super easy to use. Right here is your depth adjustment, and it's got a nice little reminder that tells you which way is which. It's really easy to turn, and it's got click style increments, so you can feel how much you have actually adjusted it. It's got good retention, so it's not going to be sliding around and messing up your depth settings without you actually wanting to change it. Right here, we've got onboard storage for the 2 extra included tips. The standard one's a little bit, it's the standard. This one's a little bit slimmer, and this one wraps around the head of the nailer so you can see exactly where you're pushing into, and it gives it a little bit more cushion so it won't mar up the work pieces. The slim, standard, and wraparound tip all have a line on the bottom to mark center that complements the arrow on the top to mark center on the actual nailer. One note on the Gen 1 version, the gun's recoil would actually knock these off of the post and you'd lose them. With this one, I haven't had that issue at all. Right here, you've got an LED that lights up when you've got the gun on and pull the trigger. And it does a pretty good job of illuminating where you're shooting to with minimal shadows. You do get some shadows on this side, but it does light up the workpiece pretty well. I just want to point out this little ledge right here is actually excellent if you're closing up the magazine. It's got a pretty strong spring. You can actually grab this and pop it closed if you don't slam it together. That's a nice little handhold for that. They've moved the belt clip down here, so when you hang the gun, it's upside down. You can just reach down and grab the handle. It's much more balanced like this than the Gen 1 version was, and you can also move it to the other side if you're left-handed. This side of the gun, if you're right-handed, has rubber strips set on here, so when you set it down, you're setting it down on soft contact points, so you're not going to mar up a workpiece. The other side only has this one, so if you are left-handed and move this, the bottom of the gun isn't going to have a rubberized grip that it's setting on, but the top and back will still be rubberized. This gun is really well balanced. You can see they've got a little bit of weight back behind the handle here, so it's not too front heavy. I think it works best with a 3 amp hour or a 2 amp hour battery, but you can take any M18 battery. It's just the slim pack ones are nicer because they're a little bit lighter. I think this thing weighs in at about 6.3 pounds. As far as controls goes, we've got the on-off button here. You got to hold it down, and then you've got a mode button. You can go to single fire, so when you depress your actuator right here, you can pull the trigger and fire 1 nail, or you can go to bump fire mode where you hold down the trigger, and every time you depress this against the workpiece, it'll fire a nail automatically. Looking at the Gen 1 and the Gen 2 side by side, you can see the Gen 2 is a lot slimmer, especially in the front area in the head right here. So the Gen 1 had a horrible sight line. You're shooting nails out right here. You've got all this stuff up on top. It was really hard to see where you were actually going to shoot nails. With this one, your sight line is very clean. You can see it pretty much all the time. And they also moved the depth gauge to the opposite side here. So if you're right-handed, this is not going to be in your way at all. If you're left-handed, it might be. One other little detail that's really nice about the Gen 2 is it balances on its battery footprint here. So its center of gravity is a little bit farther back than the Gen 1. You can see the Gen 1 rests on its magazine when you set it down, so it needs a lot longer length to set it down than the Gen 2 does. Now they did make the Gen 2 nailer a little bit longer than the Gen 1, but they slimmed it down quite a bit. They took a lot of bulk out of the base at the handle here. And so this one generally feels a lot smaller and slimmer, even though it is a little bit longer. Now let's talk rapid fire. For these, with the Gen 1, it had some thermal issues. It had a thermal lockout, which protected the tool, but if you shot a whole bunch of nails really fast, in the 100 to 150 range, I think, if I'm remembering right, it would shut down on you for about half an hour and let it cool down. This one does not have that issue. You can fire 3 nails a second. I went through 300 nails as fast as I could, and I couldn't even feel any heating in this at all, and it didn't show any signs of slowing down. I don't know, I've seen a patent. They've got some thermal management phase change material. I think they're using that for the framing nailers. I don't know if they're using that for the 18 gauge nailer, but they certainly could be to help with that thermal management. Most of the time though, you're not shooting that rapid fire, so that was kind of a bad thing about the Gen 1, but at least it was protecting the tool, and it was probably going to be a rare real-world scenario where you actually reach that thermal lockdown. All right, performance-wise, Milwaukee specifies this thing's able to shoot these 2 1/8 inch nails into solid oak. I found that is absolutely true. The Gen 1 had performance issues with that. It was about 50-50 on which it would actually sink. This one will shoot them a 1/16 of an inch or farther down into the surface of 2 inches of solid red oak with 2-inch nails. So I was super impressed with the capability of that. Another thing they improved, with the slimmer nose and the power increase, angled nailing is much more consistent with this thing. I can sink angled nails every time as long as I get that depth setting dialed in. It is very consistent and just an excellent performer shooting angled nails, which you do a lot with 18 gauge brad nailers, so that's really important that it performs well in that area. Nail hole size is also something they improved with this. It's just the size of the 18 gauge brad. If you've got the depth setting right, if you're going too deep, you will get the striker imprint on your workpiece, but you just gotta make sure you do a couple test fires before you start working on your actual material with the length of nails that you want, and you'll be fine. It's got great consistency for depth. So I've tried quite a few different brands of nails. I've tried 2-inch Porter Cable, 1 1/4 inch Hitachi, 3/4 inch Porter Cable, all galvanized, and 3/4 inch Grex stainless brads, and I haven't had any issues with any of them. It takes them all fine, so it's got a great versatility for whatever brand of nails you want to use. I haven't found one so far that doesn't work well with the gun. Another great feature of this gun is how fast it fires. So it fires in 1/20th of a second. There's 0 ramp up time. It's really imperceptible from when you pull the trigger to when it fires. I haven't noticed any delay. And you can do super rapid fire with this, 3 nails a second. I don't ever fire that fast, so the capabilities of the tool far outpace my capabilities to place my shots accurately. As far as battery life goes for this thing, it runs great on a compact battery. I think most jobs that I'm doing, I don't even need to recharge in the middle of it. If you're doing a lot of trim work or something, as long as you have one extra spare compact battery, I think you should be able to run indefinitely as long as you start charging one when you empty it. So one thing I do need to mention, when I say this gun has worked great, this particular gun has worked awesome for me. But this is the second gun that Milwaukee sent me of the Gen 2 fuel nailer. The first one they sent me, I used it for a few hundred shots, and then I moved and let it sit for a few months, and it might have gotten banged around the move, I don't know. But when I tried to use it again, every 50 to 100 nails, it would fail to fire, and I get this weird stuttering ratcheting sound. So anyway, every 50 to 100 nails it would fail to fire. It was a very repeatable problem. So I contacted Milwaukee and sent it back because they wanted to take a look at it and see how it had failed. And they got back to me and said it was an air leak. So I don't know if that was the nitrogen cylinder or if there was a gasket and some more compressed air somewhere in between there. But that's what they told me had happened. So that's something that I experienced as a failure, and I haven't heard of any other reports of that happening, and Milwaukee told me that's not an issue that they've been seeing returns for. It just seems to be a one-off lemon that I was unlucky enough to get. That even if it does happen to you, that would still be within the 5-year warranty period on this. That would definitely be covered. So, and I've had great experiences with Milwaukee warranty service, so I wouldn't really worry about that. If you do happen to be unlucky enough to get a gun with that same problem, it's going to be covered. One of the first things that Milwaukee told us when they introduced this at NPS 19 was that this has been redesigned from the ground up from the Gen 1 version. And I believe them. They took every single criticism I had and addressed it, and they listened and they redesigned this thing to match what their users wanted, and I think that's great. So overall, I am super impressed with this tool. It's a great nailer. I think it's one of the best 18 gauge cordless brad nailers that you're going to be able to find out there. Stock price point, this thing is $280 bare tool or $400 for a kit. It's on the higher side of the price point for cordless nailers, but like I said earlier, I think it's one of the best, and I think you're really getting your money's worth when you pick this one up. So I hope this review is helpful. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments section below, and once again, don't forget to subscribe.